Welcome back to the Zero Space Program. What you're seeing here is the beginnings of a modification we are about to make to our shuttle thingy Medusa. What we're going to be doing, and I did have some really cool missions planned actually coming up, but this is kind of one that I'm squeezing in between them. So the other week when I said keep an eye out for the next videos, there's going to be some more submissions. These are not those missions, but they are still coming. What I've done is added a stage that can fire while in orbit. However, this still doesn't really meet our requirements. This has some limitations. Primarily, the limitation is it cannot dock, which is kind of necessary for space operations, and it can't maneuver in space. That's one way of dealing with that problem, but it does need RCS. Now I know we're kind of skipping a little bit the usual way to get into orbit, you know, putting up a capsule of some kind and then just allowing it to burn its way down. The reason for that is that what I'm going for is maximum efficiency. So everything I want to be, at least to some extent, reusable and survivable, because I think that adds an extra challenge to the game that you don't normally find. You'll also note that the wingtip landing gear, that's the word I was looking for, is gone because it wasn't working. I'm going to make some changes now to make sure that we can sort of meet our requirements. And the problem is that this engine being detachable, which it needs to be, means that getting our centre of mass and centre of lift aligned continually is not possible. So we're going to have a rethink of the stages. What I'm going to do first of all is this comes off, and we're extending the length because we're going to build two modular versions depending on what we're trying to achieve. So utility, I think it's under. Okay, I mean, one thing we could do is take off the avionics package and put a shielded docking port on the front, but that basically allows us to control the flight much more stably, and I don't really want to give that up. So here's one version that we're going to be working with, and if I open this up, there's the docking port, and we will dock on a port that comes down on an arm, and we'll have to just design our space stations with that in mind. The other variant, I suppose, of this will be a cargo hauler. And obviously you can't get a huge amount of cargo in this thing, but it is possible to get a small probe or something in there, or at least it was once. Where's the cargo bay for size 1? Maybe they've got rid of it, so maybe we can only have the Clampotron version. That's not necessarily a problem. The main thing is having some modularity, which is what we're going to have. No, come on, there we go. The modularity again, I guess, then will come from other units that we can apply, things like the Convertitron. Not technically necessary, but it's still an option. And we can also swap that middle element out for something else and apply the Clampotron to the nose. Let's see what else we can get. We'll get a service bay for repair work, and that can also fit at the back there. That's a massive storage container. And we can also get where's the right size? There it is. We can also connect batteries and all kinds of things. In fact, I'm going to put a battery in because they are important. Let's see. Okay, first things first. we're gonna retest this base element. So this will be the orbiter, let's say. We'll scrap that off. Let's take a look at the mass and the lift. So the wing surfaces need to come forward to here, and now that should fly correctly. I hope. I strongly hope. And what we're going to do is, if this platform is solid, we're going to test how it works by sending it up into orbit. And the problem is, in the condition it's in now, further modification is going to be necessary because it's not very well heat shielded. So this is for this is basically cooling your engines in space, which is not something we're going to need, but we will on larger systems. Instead, what we are worried about is actual heat shielding, which I don't know which. Here we go. These. And I have a theory that we are going to test. And that theory is that it doesn't matter how these are angled, as long as they are attached. So we're going to have jettisonable heat shields that we will drop upon re-entering orbit. However, so re-entering from orbit, but what that does mean is we need to test now that this thing can fly with them in position. So what we'll do is we'll put one on nose section. Yeah, go away. We want it kind of like that, I suppose. Is that aligned? Not really. So that should do it. Excuse me. Okay, let's try and. Now, does it have to be on a? I guess it has to be on a hard point. That's a real pain in the nads. That's not going to work. That's not really ideal. What about this? Let's try it. And what we're going for is it's functional. It doesn't have to look amazing. It just has to function. And then we'll have two. What am I doing? I forget where everything is. We're going to have two hanging from the undersides of the wing structure, and then we'll probably have to reset the wings again. Hello, what are you? There. Okay, the wing structure needs to come a wee bit forward again. Okay, so this is the Orbiter Mark 1. Nothing's getting an official name yet because we're very much in the prototype stage. And it is ugly and stupid, but the main thing is, does it fly? It does have a man module. Ah, I know what's going on. I don't have any Kerman left. So we'll save, we'll go back here, and we'll hire some douchebags. It's because I did some off-camera testing for future ideas. Nothing that's going to stop us having accidents and whatnot. Just some fundamental ideas of what is possible to attempt. So we'll hire a bunch of these Muppets. And then the next question, of course, is delivery. Once we know this works in the atmosphere, what's the best way to get it into orbit? You know, should we be treating it as a space plane, which effectively it is, or do we launch it on the top of a rocket structure? We'll use Kamzen, because he was the first person on the list, which is as good a qualification as any. So this thing now is heavier and longer, which is going to affect the handling. I think that's fair to say. I haven't equipped any lights yet. There will be lights, and there will be some RCS outputs. Plenty of things to keep us occupied. Okay, so what we want is the parachutes on a separate stage. This thing is fast. Doesn't seem to want to lift off, however. I hope I read things right. Okay. Okay, there we've hit a problem straight away. That if we angle our nose up too high, the whole thing just washes out. Now, what I'm wondering is maybe if the heat shield is having an effect there, but because we've left the avionics on, we can actually lock our attitude in place. Okay, so next stage, away with the heat shields. And then hopefully this thing begins to handle a bit better. Which is kind of true, but it does feel a bit like flying a greased weasel. We'll knock the power off, and we're going to try and line ourselves up with the landing strip. I don't think that's necessarily... There's some debris, some debris bits there from the earlier videos. Okay, getting this lined up is proving more difficult than I had anticipated. It doesn't help that we're gaining speed the entire time. Well, it's a good way to wash off speed. But we washed off too much speed. Okay. Well, we've bollocksed it really, haven't we? When in doubt, launch it into space anyway. This is so badly designed, it's not even funny. It's genuinely terribly designed. Look at it wobble. Look at it wobble. Yeah. No good. That shouldn't even be possible. I wonder why it's doing that. I am curious. I mean, I know it's terribly designed, but still. It shouldn't be doing that, surely. It's going to start going up again before it hits the ground. Yes, I think it might. I think it's because I designed it in the spaceplane hangar, so it's only working on 2 lines of symmetry. That... I don't know if that engine pivots either. We need to dislodge ourselves. That shouldn't still be connected. Okay, there we go. So get the lights on for what it's worth. This is the best landing manoeuvre of all time, and you'll notice that what I've done is I've put lights on the underside so we get a better idea of how high off the ground we are. Oh, this thing still handles terribly. I promise I'm not doing this on purpose. I genuinely thought that as long as it gets on the ground it's fine, but that's really not the case, is it? We don't want to land in the sea. Once you get used to it, it does sort of fly okay. I mean, not great, but it can operate. So, I mean, I suppose it's, in many ways it's kind of like the real space shuttle, right? That it kind of... it's not really designed for aerodynamic flight so much as it is to survive re-entry. Well, I know that was stupid, but I still consider it a successful test because we've proven, I think, that this thing can recover and land. We haven't tested our re-entry theory as yet. However, it is a step in the right direction. Let's put the brakes on. I think it's because it's not quite with those X-wings at the back. I know they do the job in the atmosphere, but I think on the way up, I think they're just too out of line. I don't think it helps that there's probably a drag factor coming from the items on the underside, which I didn't think would actually be counted into the simulation, but apparently it is. Let's taxi ourselves. Really doesn't require much throttle at all to get rolling. The turning circle is atrocious. But we can maneuver. We can maneuver. So the next stage, I suppose, is I guess we probably have to replicate this design in the rocket launch lab and work on more layers of symmetry so that we can get things properly aligned. It should still work in the atmosphere. That would certainly be my assessment. And obviously, while it isn't perfect, we are sort of working on the premise that whatever we design is going to be required to do more than one job. You know, if this was just something to fly, then we'd take that center element back out and we'd have that excellent aircraft, that incredibly fast, fuel efficient A to B solution. But the fact that this has to go up and transfer crew between space stations or deliver different elements, I mean, we're still going to work on a larger version in the future to deliver cargo for refueling missions in particular, because we will have fuel stations in orbit that fuel missions that extend sort of further out into the solar system, and that is definitely going to be a necessity. We're going to recover this craft. That's something that's going to happen. Boom. And I guess I'm going to go away now and think about how to get this thing into orbit properly. See in a moment. If at first you don't succeed, add a bigger engine, and also figure out where the symmetry button is. So what I've done, you will see, is add a shit ton of wings to try and add a bit of stability. There's also RCS up and down the structure, and some space sticky tape holding things together. This, I imagine, is too much thrust and too much fuel, but all we want is to go straight up into space and come straight back down. But this thing is so light that I imagine this stage won't actually be necessary to get this thing into orbit, which means we have all that fuel potentially to play around with, to sort of go somewhere. Which is really good. Obviously we don't have that final stage that I was talking about earlier. So this would also have to get us back on a trajectory for Kerbin, assuming that's the case. The heat shields are still in place, but I've counteracted that with these two little towers, like radar domes. This is kind of like a, let's call it a recovery system. I had the idea when I was thinking about how this plane tends to wash out a little if it gets too slow, and I had nightmares about it sort of hitting the air at the wrong angle, which we're going to do. We're not flying forwards, we're not coming in like a plane coming into land. This is a straight up, straight down kind of deal, so it's going to hit the air very, very hard, and it might begin to spin uncontrollably. And this is kind of like a recovery system where those two heavy parachutes deploy, and that's going to get the plane facing the right direction again, so it's on sort of the horizontal plane, and then we can fire up the engines while they've got access to the air, get some thrust going, unhook ourselves from this structure, and sort of drop down like we were dropping away from the belly of a bigger aircraft. I have no idea if it works. It looks ridiculous like everything I build. It's probably stupid, but I'm going to launch it anyway. Away we go. Oh, I made a mistake there. I made a bit of a mistake. The engines are firing in the wrong order. I'm so ill. We want this engine to swap with this one then, I guess. Yes, we do. That's amazing. That goes in there, and you go below here. Alright, third time lucky. How have I... Jesus. Okay. I think I've got it this time. Success! I have no idea if the rest are in the correct order. I don't even dare to imagine. No, they're not. They're not in the right order at all. There we go. There we go, that should do it. Well, the speed's definitely good. And yep, we're on course. It hasn't washed out either, because the extra layer of symmetry seems to be doing its job. It's not perfectly aerodynamically stable, but I've thrown some extra SAS on here. And we want to get out to about 100,000 meters, which I think is going to be possible on this main tank. Yes, almost definitely. We could probably even make contact with the moon and come back, but that's a bit ambitious. I just want to test the basics of the system in part 1, and then part 2 we'll talk about doing some kind of... Okay, there we go. We are in space. Kamzen Kerman, you are our first Kerman or Kerwoman in orbit. Well, not orbit, but in space. That's a milestone for us. Okay, so this middle stage is completely superfluous for this mission. We need to disconnect. And fire. And disconnect. Okay, so now only the base stage is coming in, and we need to angle ourselves so that we're at least landing in sort of the right in the direction that we're flying. Okay, I think that is about right. So I'm going to crank the time up a little bit until we've completed our ascent, and yeah, now we're on the down run, and this is where it all becomes super serious. I think I've got these stages right. I am going to allow this to spin out however it wants to spin out, first of all, and then once we're through the thermal stage, let's get the lights on. I'm going to drop off the heat shields and then deploy the recovery chutes and hope to God that that works. Fire up the engines once they've spooled up, drop the chutes, and hopefully fly off into the sunset and land somewhere, and hope that these pylons don't disrupt the aerodynamics too much. They're in line with the engines, so hopefully they shouldn't, but you never know with these things. Okay, I think we're at the right angle. I mean, this thing's going to go completely out of control, I suspect, because we're driving smack on into it's almost like diving vertically into water rather than gracefully landing like a seaplane. So the impact is going to be much stronger once we hit the thicker part of the atmosphere. So you can see us counting our way in here. Come on. I want to see how badly this... There we go. So... Oh, no, that's lost it. That's lost it. Yeah, the angle is all wrong, but my theory is correct. That just having the heat shields on here, anywhere, means nothing is burning up. Okay, I'm going to turn off the SAS and everything else, and we're going to now disconnect the heat shields, and it's recovery system time. I don't know what altitude these deploy. I hope they deploy. I do hope they deploy. If they deploy too low, then maybe we could just let them take us all the way down, but that kind of defeats the object of it being a plane. I think I've selected the wrong chutes for this. I think there's sort of a drogue chute that deploys at a much higher altitude, and that's really what we want to be using. Come on then, deploy if you're going to deploy. There it is. There it is. Okay, so now we fire the engines up, and once we get up to a certain speed, disconnect. And oh my god, as if that worked. It's almost as if that was a good idea. It's almost like it was a good idea. It obviously wasn't, but it's like it was. I turned far too prematurely, and that maneuver was too strict. Can we not? Can we not, please? Can we not? Whew. I got too slow. What's clear is if the widest part of the flight surfaces hits the air, we wipe off so much speed, the entire thing stalls out and begins backflipping and all kinds of craziness. So it has to be flown with a very careful hand, but it flies, and we could be about, I hope, we could be about to bring our first crewman from near space, and by that I mean actual space but near the planet, back down to the surface of the planet, hopefully without exploding him, which is usually a key marker of success amongst most scientists, most in the scientific community. Please don't crash. I'm talking to the computer and the game. We're going to overshoot the runway. But you knew that anyway. You're all smarter than me, and you knew that was going to happen ages before it did. So we're going to swing round, put the engines back on, so we don't want to lose too much speed or else we'll wash out again. And we're going to hop over the wreckage of Prototype 2. And we're going to careen towards the sea. Come on, come down, come down. We really are careening towards the sea now. Let's not have that happen. My landings still need a lot of work with this thing. I promise I'm not totally terrible at this game, but terrible enough. And it's a success. Hello. So, after some mishaps, which I suppose are to be expected, we took Kamsun here from the launch pad, well, the runway really, vertically up to 110,000 meters-ish, brought him back into the atmosphere and successfully recovered the orbiter without too much drama. It's ridiculous and it doesn't look right, and it's very, very badly designed. If you really enjoy this game or watching people play this game, there are a million YouTubers better at it than me, but if you enjoy failure, then stick around, because this is where things start to get interesting now. We still got another part for this mission, really, which is to complete a successful orbital re-entry. So I will see you next time for that, and then we'll get into the meaty stuff. Take care.